If you're an attorney in the pursuit of a successful law practice, fulfilling career, and the life of your dreams, this podcast has it all. Behind the Bench gives you great tools to overcome the unique challenges you face every day as a law firm owner. Welcome to Behind the Bench podcast with your host, Josh Konigsberg, author, partner, and co-founder of Law Firm Marketing Pros and lifelong entrepreneur.
Hey, Josh Konigsberg here with Behind the Bench podcast. I'm super excited today to introduce our guest, Keith Dyer. Keith is with law firm Builder based out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you started law firm Builder?
I started law firm Builder about 4 years ago, but I started an ad agency about 21 years ago. I'd been working in corporate America, and to make a long story short, my fun job turned into a job in a cubicle, and I'm not a cubicle guy. My mother was in marketing and advertising for a lot of her career, and she knew that I wanted to start a new business, and she decided that she wanted to launch her own ad agency, so she asked me if I would join her, and in 2001, we launched Necessary Marketing Incorporated. And for a long time, that was a traditional ad agency back when traditional ad agencies made a lot of sense. And we did a lot of media buying and media production for car dealerships, tobacco companies, PGA golf tournaments, and eventually law firms. And I kind of backed into the whole law firm world because I had buddies that were attorneys and they wanted help and they needed somebody they felt like they could trust. And so I got started doing that with them, probably 15 years ago. And over time, it's grown and grown to the point where we decided we would niche down into it because we've been successful for them, for lack of a better explanation.
That's a great story. So really, it's 15 years in business dealing with attorneys and then niching down. When did you just make the decision to niche? Because I know we made that decision in the fall of, we're in our 13th year. So it was in the fall of 2019. Officially, it took us about 90 days to put the brand together and launch, have a website built and all the other goodies that we needed to get together. And we officially launched in January of 2020. So when did you make the decision and put the brand together?
The decision to niche was made before the brand was put together. So I was somewhat niched into it probably around the same time, 2018, 2019, and had some products that we were trying that we weren't really satisfied with their quality, particularly some of them in AI. We can talk about that in a bit, but we decided technically in 2019, 18, that range to go ahead and niche down. But then the law firm Builder, the actual brand was built in 2020 in conjunction with one of our mutual clients, Clark Speaks. He's the one that convinced me to really go in this direction. And it's been a really good, scenario.
I love the job you did on the branding, by the way. I love the logo. And for all of the listeners out there, if you want to go to www.lawfirmbuilder.com, you can check it out. And maybe my team can even slide in your logo here. That would be great. But really did a nice job. So in terms of services that you offer, you're in the marketing space. We're in the marketing space. How do we differ?
We differ in that I am almost more like an employee of the law firm in looking at their entire marketing strategy, which digital is obviously a vital key part of that. And so I'm not specifically doing digital services such as SEO, pay-per-click. I'm more on the strategic side, but then also we are skilled and able to buy traditional media, including billboards, radio, television, print, whatever is required. So we can actually end up saving law firms money because we're not commission based. And so one of the things that's interesting about the way we work is, first of all, it's fractional. so it's more affordable and more money can go back into the law firm's budget, so they save money that way. But we also do not take agency commissions on media buys, and that allows for a pretty substantial amount, another amount of money to go back into the ad budget, which allows firms to buy more cases.
Well, that to me is huge, what you just described. So if I might reiterate, so I can clarify in my own mind, that you're a fractional CMO that analyzes the entire strategic plan, both analog or what I'll call traditional and the digital, bringing them together. And at the same time, you're fractional, so it's affordable for the law firm. And you also don't take a commission, which is normally about 15% on media buys. So the law firm is saving about 15% on all their media buying from using a traditional ad agency. So basically, you're free.
I am. Technically, yes. It's a great business model in that sense. And it really was designed, that was one of the key pieces to it, but also to make sure that they were getting marketing advice from an objective source. So I'm not telling them, hey, the answer to getting more cases is to spending more money, because that's not always the case. I think it's hard for people to trust someone when they know they're going to make more money by spending more money. So that was the key piece to that. But you also brought up another piece there that we've talked about a lot, and that's the power of combining digital media with traditional media and branding. Law firms make huge mistakes when they ignore the branding, when they ignore the power of the traditional media. Granted, it does come with a price tag, but hopefully the way that I work and the way we work with you can really help them save money and help them afford that faster than they might be able to at their growth stage.
Well, if you were to give me and the audience really an idea of the percent of, let's just say, a law firm that's generating about $1 million a year in fee income, what should the marketing mix be in terms of percent of spend? Or I like to call investment, because marketing is an investment.
What I've learned and typically kept to is 20% of that should be branding for a firm of that size. 80% of it should be digital. And the reason why the 80% of digital is so heavy is because they're going to get to cases faster and get more revenue because they're uncovering the existing demand in the market. And they're putting themselves in line to have a chance at that business.
Yeah, that's the 3% of the buyer's pyramid that's out there looking right now for the services.
That's right.
Which leaves 97% of the market that is still learning about you, and we'll talk about that maybe at another time. So if I were to take it from the million, let's talk about a transition of the marketing mix as a percent of the marketing investment to, let's say, a $3 million firm to a $5 million firm to a $10 million firm. How does it transition?
Yeah, so it transitions to where over time more money is spent on branding, so that you become, the obvious choice, and people know about you before they ever search on Google. Of course, they're still going to look for you on Google, but with a different mindset, and that they're probably going to want to use you. So, I think without getting into direct percentages, because every firm is different and practice areas can differ, over time, the larger you get, the more you spend on branding.
Right.
And so that's really the key. And it's vital for the startups, though, and not just startups, but firms that are making, in that lower million tier area, to continue to invest in digital in the very beginning of what they're doing. But then over time, they can build the brand, and they should be building it all the time, but maybe uncover some less expensive ways to do it in the beginning. And there are ways to do that. And that's something we can talk about later, or if someone ever wanted to schedule a call with me, I'm happy to go through that with them. But branding is not always TV, radio, and billboards. It's other ways. There are other ways to brand your law firm that are affordable. And I was on a podcast the other day, and somebody was mentioning the Morgan & Morgan and how they come in and outspend the law firms. And what smaller law firms that are struggling with this whole concept need to remember that those that are successful are the ones that are willing to do what others are not. And so
that's just so well said, right?
Yeah. So what that means is you may have to work a little harder and maybe you have to think a little more strategically about how you're building your brand. And so that it's kind of like, and this is kind of I don't mean to get into history or anything, but
No, that's fine.
when the U.S. and was fought in the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese knew that they could not compete with their overwhelming firepower. The United States had overwhelming firepower. So their whole mantra was to fight them by grabbing their shirts. So if they were fighting that close to each other, the big weapons didn't matter anymore. And the analogy I'm making toward the business growth is you have to get out there and get right up with your customer.
Right.
You've got to do things that they see you in ways they don't see the big guys. And so that could be sponsoring events. It could be doing charity work. It could be guerrilla marketing tactics. It could be all kinds of different things that actually are effective and can help you get started on building that brand and getting the groundswell, if you will, before the air power comes in, right?
That's right. So,
and the air power meaning the TV and the billboards, et cetera.
So what you're describing to me is a gradual progression of getting clients now through a variety of methods, so you can continue to grow your firm over time and eventually get from the 1 million to the 3 million to the 5 million and so on.
That's right. So most law firms, most businesses don't have access to large amounts of capital in some stages, right? And sometimes they do. If they do, that's great. You go out and make a more aggressive plan toward what you want. But if you don't, and you're more interested in stair-stepping your growth without going broke, then that's where someone like myself, and I do think your company as well, can come in and really help and make sure that we're building this in a way that doesn't waste a lot of money, bottom line.
Right. That is so important. And we both see it all the time when we go in and analyze and acquire new clients. We see it all the time. So, who is your ideal customer or your ideal target market for the listeners out there? And I'm sure you'll talk to just about any attorney, just like I will, just to give some free advice. But
yeah, I do have a platform available for very small startup law firms and law firms that are doing less than $1 million, where they can start learning how to do this and get a good idea of what they're up against. So I will talk to any firm, any size. Of course, I like working with the large firms because they have the budget and we can really, make a lot of damage, do a lot of damage in a good way with a budget like that. But my favorite though are probably the firms that are at 7 figures that want to get to 8. That's really the sweet spot because they've established a brand. We can come in and enhance that brand. They have the capital to do what they need. They also have the ability to borrow if they need to. And as you and I've talked about this, but we have some connections there where we can help them in that process. And then the loan institutions that we work with know that we have a good plan, and they are more likely to help fund these firms that like that. So to answer your question, I love working with the firms that want to go from 7 to 8 figures. I like working with all law firms. That's why I ended up niching into it. But that's probably the best client for us.
Yeah. So again, it's to get to an 8-figure firm, you really need to get to 7 figures, and then it's not a jump typically from $1 million to 10. It's a gradual over time, and
Oh yeah.
That's typically a 5-year model, although we've been able to accelerate that in some cases. So
yeah, and that plays out specifically. And what happens is even if you had a lot of capital and you were a brand new law firm in a market, you don't have any brand equity, and so you end up, your cost per acquisition is higher because you're not getting cases in other ways, right? They're fighting it out in the media. Right. And that's not the right way to do it.
So you just mentioned something about a platform, and again, this is for the listeners out there. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about what you mean by a platform and what is it?
Yeah, we have an educational platform, lawfirmbuilder.com, where law firms can go to get whatever they need to grow. whether it's an SOP, a connection to a lender, the vetted vendors that we know are quality, that are niched into the industry. Those kinds of things is all built on one platform, and a complete certification course on everything from traditional digital to, intake, conversion, as you and I have talked about. So that's what the Law Firm Builder platform is. It's a safe place for attorneys to go and learn about marketing in an objective way, where they're not relying on an agency of any sort. They're getting real advice as someone who works for law firms sees it.
So in addition to being a fractional CMO, what you have, what it sounds like, is a resource and an advisory type of a role for.
Yeah, so there are different levels in which I can serve people. One is they could just come in and purchase the course and access to the platform, and they can learn everything for themselves. On another level, they can use the platform as an evergreen training place for their own people. And also, I will be an advisor to them on a regular basis to help them with their media buying. We actually are also introducing sort of another piece of this where I can do that for them. And then also, if they want me to help them develop a marketing plan in more detail, I can bill them by the hour in some way, shape, or form for that. And then I can go right back to not billing them. So it's got a flexibility so they can save money everywhere. Yeah. Or at the end of the day, as you and I have worked together, I can be their fractional CMO on a higher level basis, much more detailed. That's going to be for higher, grossing 7 to 8 figure firms, typically. But it just gives some flexibility to where I can still help anyone, any size law firm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. And it's almost as if you're nurturing them through to ultimately, if they do what they need to do, we all see this where, you'll give advice and people won't take it or they won't execute it on it. But if they take the advice, they can nurture through to the next level and the next level and the next level.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the reason that came to me is that, there's a couple of these guys that I've been working for since they got out of law school. So I've been with them through every stage. I've been in their offices when it was just them, and seen the pain that they go through and the stress. It's very difficult to grow a law firm. It's not easy.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
That's right. You got to have, and you can't do it alone typically, and you need good advice and you need good people around you. So over time, I was at different stages with these guys, and I've learned what works. Also through other coaching programs we've gone to over the years, I've learned a lot from those as well. And yeah, so that's exactly right. You're right, Betty. I'm trying to take this through stages, and it's my goal was, okay, if I was just getting out of law school, is there somewhere I could turn to help me? Because they don't teach this in law school.
Yes, as I like to say, they spend exactly 0 hours on marketing in law school. So
that's right. And it's a difficult thing to teach because it varies by practice area, right? And you typically don't go to law school to become a particular type of lawyer, right? You sort of choose that as you're going through it. And then so it varies, it changes. And, to get the people to actually teach it would be difficult, I think, because it's so specific and niched. But there's also a lot of competition. It's a very unique niche that way, right? Well,
So, is there a type of marketing that you think drives the most qualified leads? And again, I think you and I have seen some remarkable things over, our relationship's about 15 months old now, and we've seen some remarkable things. But again, I think there's a threshold of about $1 million, and the 3 million comes to mind. So is there something, again, just a little advice for the listeners, because I know what I think drives the most leads that are qualified, but what's your opinion?
I've been surprised in some ways whenever I put some budgets to certain things. And again, this will vary by market. It's hard to give. I think it depends upon the stage in which they're growing. In the beginning, it's going to be digital. I think as it gets down the road, I've seen tremendous things happen from the traditional media as well. a lot of times it depends upon what your competitors are doing. So what I do is I come into a market, if you're working with me on a high level, and I see where the weaknesses are in my competitors. And so then I strike where I can, where I think it's going to have some leverage. Where they're not, where they should be, is where I'll go. Right. That'll often drive the most cases. Yeah. And so there are not a ton of choices. That's the good thing, is you can go out and kind of see. And then, to kind of think about being to make things work, to being the dominant frequency, at least on a channel, right? Maybe not the dominant spender, but there are other ways you can get frequency that aren't necessarily, require spending more money.
Yeah, and I think the key also for both of us is to try to get wins as fast as possible for the attorneys. And it's funny that you mentioned that. Just about a week ago, I was on with a personal injury attorney, and he had given me 4 or 5 names of his competitors. And as we did our analysis, and I went back to him, we found a gap in wrongful death. Then he just jumped out. He says, "Oh my God, I love wrongful death," and really none of his competitors were doing anything online and digitally. So we're going to attack that first for him and get him those wins first as we're building out all the other stuff. So that pretty much is exactly what you're describing.
It is. So I'll give you an example. I found a small, TD station that I did not expect to find in the market that hit our demo perfectly, and there was nobody on it.
There you go.
So we start with a test, and the test was spectacular, and it's remained spectacular. And I'm not going to mention anything about who it is because I'm going to keep it a secret.
Okay. That's the secret recipe. We all have one of those, right?
Of course. And my goal is to find that for my clients, or to make sure that they are not. Here's a big mistake, and I'll give you I'll leave these 2 things, and I don't know when you're ready to end it, but I think that law firms need to be careful about not underestimating the value of knowing what their competition is doing. That's a huge one. And then trusting the wrong people to manage your stuff and manage your marketing and understand how to get cases. You want people that are experienced, that are going to give you objective advice. It's a mistake for a single ad agency, I feel like, to drive marketing strategy. Because oftentimes, and I'm not. Your company has been unbelievably great. You have your client's best interest in mind, but there are agencies out there that do not.
Yep, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. We really do care. We really do try hard, and genuinely, deeply care.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Are there 1 or 2 things that you see consistently that interfere with a law firm's ability to grow, and reach their goals and dreams, and ultimately be successful?
Spreading their money too thin. So if they have an amount of money, instead of buying vertically and dominating vertically, they're spreading it over too many things and not getting any traction. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see.
I just the law firm I just mentioned, exact same thing. When I figured out, I asked what's working and what's not working, and what do you need help with now? And his answer was exactly what you just described. And I want to dominate, and I want it to be digital. I tried TV and billboards and radio, but it was just spread too thin. I just didn't have enough money to do it right.
Right. So that's what we do different, right? That's right. And you know this because you've seen me completely sacrifice money for myself to insert you, or insert, the right situation. And he can still do radio and billboards and TV. He's got to scale into them.
That's right. And that's the conversation. Let's really quickly, I just like to mention this because it's almost like an afterthought for most law firms. Let's talk about reviews and how important that is online reviews are for law firms?
They're huge. Well, they're huge just technically because Google puts a lot of weight into them, right?
In terms of SEO and ranking.
That's right. They're also huge just in the way people buy services these days, especially services, but products and services. They're going to go and look and see if you have less than a 4.0 rating, it's a horrible thing for your firm.
You lost.
Yeah. And I mean, even that it's just that 4.0, people know your 5.0, I think people are skeptical of, unless it's just 2 or 3 reviews, right?
Right.
But that sweet spot is between 4 and 5, and 4.5 and above is really where you want to be.
Right. As I like to say, are you going to go to the transmission repair shop that has 757 5-star reviews? I'm struggling with that one. So, but yeah,
That was Uncle Joe and Cousin Mary and
right.
14 of their kids.
And just, I like to talk about this again. This is almost a forgotten area, and that is building of a database and the importance of having control of that aspect of your marketing and really the future of your business.
It's massive, and it's so cheap. Once you get the database built, you have the ability to remind them every day of who you are and why you're there. And, as we move into the era of AI, the more data that you have on folks, the better off you're going to be. Of course, in our world, we're not talking about any sensitive data. We just want to be able to reach out and touch them whenever, we think it's appropriate, and to try to nurture them to understand that, hey, look, at some point down the road, you're going to need an estate planning attorney, or you're going to need some kind of an attorney for something. Don't forget about us, because we've already served you once, or we've been in touch with you in some way, and we want to be there for you when you need us. Because nobody cares about lawyers until they need one.
That's right. That's so well said. That's right. That's right. And certainly the brunt of a lot of jokes, right?
Yeah, that's right. And what's really true, and people give personal injury lawyers a hard time, but who do you think's more on their side? The lawyer who they hire, or the lawyer that is chasing an ambulance, which is seriously silly these days, or is it the insurance company that is paid to try to not pay? They get paid to not pay, right?
That's funny. I just happened to rewatch Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah,
and there's a perfect example, and that's a personal injury attorney.
Yeah,
so
that's an amazing story. I always love that one.
Yeah, and just seeing the attorney on the other side of the table making ridiculous statements and ridiculous offers, right? So
yeah, so most of the attorneys that I work with that are personal injury have at some point worked for a insurance company, and so they know firsthand what's going on.
Right. That's right. Mm-hmm. So to wrap up the database conversation, it's almost like if you control, this is the one thing you have absolute control over. So what I mean by that is we don't control what Google does. We know Google does a lot of algorithmic updates, both on paid ads, on LSAs, the local service ads, and on the map and the organic. We also know that we're subject to the whims of Facebook, and there's been recently across all industries a mass removal or deactivation of Facebook business accounts for violations, unknown violations, if you will. And I don't know how many of the listeners that's happened to, but my point is that you don't control what they do.
No,
it's your database. You can control it. You can stay in touch if you communicate properly.
Absolutely. And they have too much control. And it's cheaper to market to someone who you've already sold once than it is to try to get them as a brand new customer.
Right. And every customer should be an advocate and a referral engine for you if managed properly.
Yeah. I have a diagram that I can show you sometime, and I will, where the whole process is shown as you attract in various ways, bring them into your universe. They get converted in an intake process. They have a great experience. You get a solid, experience for them. And then they leave you a great review. And then they go out there and they're little marketers.
That's right.
For you. They're little soldiers out there for you. They're huge, because everything marketing is everything in any business. anytime you touch the public in any way, the way you treat your vendors, the way you treat your customers, it all is marketing. They're going to go out there, and the worst thing you can have is someone out there that's trashing, right? So you want to do the best you can to build those processes and procedures that make the experience for them a good one. They know they're being taken care of, and they know that you're paying attention to them so that they can become little marketers.
And not only that, the conversion rate on a referral versus a non-referral is dramatic.
It is.
And I see it almost as it's our conversion rate is probably is double for direct referrals because they've already got a trusted relationship. So, and yeah,
absolutely. But if you asked, if you knew two great personal injury, or you knew somebody that told you that these are two great personal injury lawyers, you should try them before anybody else, would you ever go to Google or?
Yeah, well, I think the customer journey is they are going to go to your website, and then they
of course they are. Yes, of course. Yes,
they might go to Google and read some reviews, and they might go to your social media also.
They will. The digital presence is obviously necessary, regardless. I'm just saying that the chance, to your point, the conversion is going to be higher because a friend that they trust has told them that they're good.
All right. So, what would you say to the law firm owner who's trying to take the law firm to the next level?
Be bold and be patient.
Patience, that's so huge, right? It's not a light switch, it's a progression.
And half measures give less than half results typically. Full measures give better than you expect often. And, like I said, to understand your competitors and don't spread your budget too thin. Those are the things that I would say. And that this can be done, and you can still grow a great law firm in this day and age with the right people and the right resources.
So well said, Keith. And then, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just said thank you.
Yeah. So any additional nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share before we end the podcast today?
I think I've given a lot of information that I wanted to give to you. I think that one thing I would say is that we've developed quite a unique bond together and relationship, and that we know we can get results. And when you've got that kind of confidence, really great things happen. We're looking forward to helping more law firms. I know that our combined forces have created a powerhouse in a couple of instances, and that's been really exciting. And I'm excited to bring it to other firms.
And only growing, man. It really is an exciting time, not only just for us, but for the law firms. I mean, we really see how grateful they are for what we're able to do for them and their families and their staff and their families. So the impact is exponential. So it's really good.
It is. It's huge, because once they have peace of mind, that's what they're looking for. When they're not laying awake at bed at night worrying about where the cases are coming from or how they're going to pay back their line of credit or whatever, they know they have a system. And here, I guess maybe this is my last nugget. What they're looking for is predictability. That's what we're all looking for in business, right?
Yep.
And so Law Firm Builder is really kind of built upon that idea, is that let's get your revenue and your profit predictable and better over time. We live in such a tremendous time as well technologically, that the opportunities are consistently changing. Think about for years and years as an ad agency, you had 4 choices: billboards, radio, TV, and print for years.
Yeah, that's right.
That is fragmented, and it's continuing to fragment and continuing to change. It's a difficult world to maneuver, but that also means that there's a lot of opportunities.
That's right. So well stated. Well, Keith, it's been great to have you on today. I look forward to our next visit. And again, it's Keith Dyer at lawfirmbuilder.com. Go check him out. He's got great stuff for you. Just about any level law firm can benefit from talking to Keith. That's it for now. Josh Konigsberg, Law Firm Marketing Pros.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another fabulous episode of Behind the Bench. I hope you take action on some insight and tips you learned today. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share.